Roger Caras, a writer and photographer, once said that dogs are not our whole life, but they make our lives whole. This weekend, we sadly lost a four-legged member of our family. His name was Joey. Joey was a basset hound. He was tricolor, which means he had black, white, and brown fur, and he was about 14 years old. I say about, but really we have no idea how old Joey was. You could tell he was an older dog when he died. We adopted him from a shelter, but we didn't have any information on his age, but that was everybody's best guess, was that at this point he was 14. He was adopted on February 3rd, 2006, and that's the day that we call his birthday. He was named after Joey Bishop from the Rat Pack. And if you know anything about the Rat Pack, you know the other members are Frank Sinatra, Dean Martin, Peter Lawford, and Sammy Davis Jr. And while they were all funny, Joey Bishop was kind of the underrated one. He was hilarious. He had a TV show that we've watched, and it's a really good show. It turns out that our Joey's birthday, the day we adopted him, is the actual birthday of the real Joey Bishop. At the time when we named him and picked him up, this was unbeknownst to us. It was really kind of just luck that we found him on that particular day. We obviously named him that. He didn't come with that name. But my husband, being the writer that he is, wrote the real Joey Bishop to let him know. And the real Joey Bishop wrote back and gave us a signed picture that said, "To Doug, thanks for naming the dog after me, Joey." And I just love that story and its connection and the coincidence. That's just fantastic to me. Our Joey was just as funny as the real one. He had a tail that wouldn't stop. His tail was not very long, but it would just beat you to death. He was always happy, and his tail would just whack you in the leg, and it would hit the other dogs in the face. It was quite comical. He was also really long and would get stuck in places. In San Antonio, we lived there for a year in a small apartment. He would kind of get stuck. He wouldn't be able to make a U-turn around like the coffee table, and he would just be so confused. At one point, he somehow managed to knock one of our laptops over onto his back, and he ran around the house with that laptop balancing on his back, so confused, just kind of like, "I don't know what's happening, guys, can I get some help?" And he was just the funniest dog. He often had slobber hanging out of his mouth, and he would shake his head, and that slobber would just land right across his forehead or right across his nose. So gross, but so funny. Joey was also very loyal. He would sleep by my bed, and if I was upset or sad or sick, he was always right there. You could always snuggle him, and he always at least looked sympathetic because he had that long, droopy face. Whenever I left, he would stare at the door, and he would wait for me and others. Joey was also a mama's boy. He followed me around the house wherever I went when he wasn't constantly napping, and especially if I was cleaning house. He would follow me, but he would follow in front of me, which was very difficult because he didn't know where we were going, but he was in front. So there was some frustration, but it was nice having a companion help me clean house. He was a very significant dog to me. He was my husband and my first dog together. We got him a few months before we were married. I had already had a toy fox terrier named Sydney, who was an absolute diva and princess and all of those kinds of things. And she really just did not care for Doug at all. So we thought, let's get a dog for the both of us. We're going to get married. Sure, let's get a dog. I also really fought to keep Joey many times. When we moved to San Antonio, we knew we were going to live in a small apartment. It was going to be difficult having a bigger dog, even though he was short. And many of our family members thought, just leave him with us, we'll take care of him, it'll be fine. And I really thought, no, I want to keep my dog. I love my dog, I adopted him, I wanted him, I want to take responsibility for him. And so I really fought to do that. And it worked out just fine. And I'm really glad after all these years that I did do that I didn't just pawn him off on somebody else, that I kept him and I dealt with him and got to enjoy him. I really learned a lot from Joey, and I would not have thought that that was possible. One of the things that I learned from Joey was to just relax and don't sweat the small stuff. Our current dog, Maggie, is a Scottish Terrier, and she is a tightly wound dog. She's always on guard. She's always looking out the window. She currently is. And if anybody walks remotely near our house, dog or human, she will go berserk. And we always knew that if we should be concerned, Joey would let us know. Maggie would go nuts, and Joey would just lay there, and that would tell us, hey, don't worry about it. But if Joey would lift his head, which he would do, he would just kind of lift it and look, and then he would lay it back down. That would say, maybe something was wrong. But if Joey would kind of get up and bark, we would know that, we should check this out. So he just let us know, relax, take care of the big things. Don't worry about the small things. It's not a big deal. Another thing I learned from Joey was to know where your home is. That doesn't really sound like any kind of a saying or anything, but I guess just to be grounded. Know where you're accepted, where you're loved. That could be with your current family or back home with your parents. But Joey always knew where his home was. I remember one time when we lived in San Antonio, he raced around the pool. Let me put it in context. I was taking him out to go to the bathroom, and he wrapped himself around a light pole. And I didn't want to step in the brush that he was in, so I tried to throw his leash around the light pole and retrieve it from the other side. This did not work at all. And it was late at night, and that leash hit the ground and just made the most terrible sound. And he got scared and started running, and he raced back around the pool with that leash just clanging behind him. And when I finally got back around to him, he was sitting at the bottom of our stairs, kind of like, I'm ready to go home. This is my house. Somebody let me in. And I just love that story, and that is one of my favorite stories of him, and I'll never forget it. And it just has a good correlation of just knowing where your home is. Another thing with Joey is that he always thought that this was the best day ever. You'd give him a treat, best day ever. My mom or sister came around, best day ever. Dinner time, that was the best day ever. Not even part of the day, but just the entire day had turned out so great because he got fed. And he just taught me to be excited about things, even the smallest things. Just be happy, be excited. I guess you could say that my dog taught me a few tricks, and I will really miss him. He was one of my best friends, and I'm glad to have known him, and I'm glad that I got to commemorate him this week in this speech. So, thanks for listening.